All right, Alexander, let's talk about the GBP. It's sliding, isn't it? Last I saw it is sliding, as is the euro.
As is the euro,
They're all
yeah.
just going down, aren't they? What's going on?
Well, I mean, what's happening? I mean, if you wanted to say it very straightforwardly, I mean, if you wanted to take it its simplest, the Fed is tightening monetary policy in the United States. That, as it always does, sucks money into the United States. The Liz Truss quasi-Quarteng government on Friday loosened fiscal policy. They're spending like there's no tomorrow. They're cutting taxes. They're doing all of those sort of things. The markets have looked at that. They're saying UK is no longer being run responsibly. They're taking their money out and they're putting it in the traditional safe haven, which is the dollar, which is rising anyway. They look at the fact that Britain is already running a massive budget deficit, a massive trade deficit. They see a government that is intent on making both bigger still. So they say this is unsustainable. It's an unsustainable financial course. So they're shifting money to the dollar. Now that's the simple way of describing it. And I mean, it's a simple one. I'm not saying it's wrong. I mean, it's largely right. But of course, what also needs to be said is that there are underlying problems like energy price problems, food price problems, which the British government is not addressing because it won't do that which it needs to do, which is to talk to Putin and do that kind of deal that we've talked about. So, in a sense, what Britain is caught in is that they either accept a recession with very high taxes, or they accept a perhaps deeper recession with rather lower taxes. But unless they sort out this problem with this on the supply side, they're going to get a recession with no clear way out. But in the immediate term, because they've gone for the idea of a recession with lower taxes as opposed to higher taxes, and with higher spending as opposed to lower spending, they have an exchange rate crisis. And be under no doubt at all, we're now at a very, very big psychological point because sterling and the dollar are almost at parity. If sterling moves below parity and does so significantly, that will be a major psychological shock in Britain. And to be frank about it, I think that the Bank of England at that point would almost certainly intervene. It would call an emergency meeting. There's already talk that it's considering doing so. Raise interest rates by far more than we've ever seen. That will create a major, make the recession much deeper in Britain. And at that point, to be frank, I think Liz Truss, Kwasi-Kwarteng and the Conservatives are held under the waterline. So we are very close to that point. We are reaching that point very quickly. I remember reading before Liz Truss became Prime Minister that she had 6 weeks to turn things round. Well, that is starting to look up optimistic at the moment. I mean, unless she's able to stabilise the situation in the markets over the next couple of hours, and she and Kwarteng, then as I say, if we start seeing the pound fall below parity with the dollar and go on falling, then as I said, it's going to have a massive effect on British opinion. And as I said, the Bank of England is going to step in in a very big way, but in a way that will also trigger an even deeper recession.
It used to be like 2-to-1 pound dollar.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
Well, when I first came to
this
Britain,
is unbelievable.
when I first came to
Or
Britain,
3-to-1. Am I
$2.
mistaken? To think my mind
No,
goes to
you're
three.
absolutely right. I
3
mean,
to 1.
it used to be when I came to Britain, which is obviously a long time ago. It was £1 was worth $2.40. Then it fell, then it got up and down. But usually, it's been in a sort of range of $1.50 to $2 So I mean, this is a huge crash, and of course, the British have always acted on the assumption that sterling is worth more than the dollar. That that the £1 sterling will buy you more than $1 will. As I said, it can't be overstated what an enormous psychological shock in Britain this would be.
You mentioned that Truss is looking at either a recession or a deep recession. Are we talking a possible depression? And
Yes.
I'm reading reports saying that 1 in 6 residents of the UK could be in poverty if this
Yes.
continues.
Well,
Historically, like how bad could things get compared to previous down cycles
well, can I just say first of all that they
in
are
the UK?
already extremely bad. Now, if you remember, I've sent you photos from my area of London, an affluent area of London. I showed you photos of a food bank where they were giving out food. I've shown you photos of a sign in my local supermarket, which talked about setting aside food for food banks. I've shown I haven't actually shown you, but I mean over the weekend I passed a local school. It was the weekend, and they were distributing clothes, free clothes, second-hand clothes from charities, and I think the queue stretched for perhaps half a mile. So we are looking at a very, very difficult economic situation in Britain already. Worse than I have ever known. And I remember the times in the 1970s and in the 1980s when we had previous recessions. We are in an extremely bad way here. And a depression and a financial crisis, another financial crisis, is by no means to be ruled out at all. I mean, if interest rates rise in order to support sterling, bear in mind that this is a country where people carry lots of debt. There's very heavy debt on mortgages, very heavy debt on credit cards. It's become almost the culture, if you like. A lot of people's assets, a lot of people's wealth or notional wealth is tied up in property. If interest rates go too high and property prices collapse, you can see that there would be a massive cascade effect, bigger probably than we got in 2008. That might start to have effects on the financial system, on the banks as well. And we could be in a depression. I don't think it's impossible.
How does Scotland react?
Yeah.
Wales, Northern Ireland. How does this affect the UK as a whole? I mean,
Well, if we get into the kind of scenario we just talked about, a depression, which, as I said, I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm saying it's a possibility. But if we get into that, well, of course, the immediate response of people is going to be to jump ship if they can. So why would Scotland want to cling on to a sinking ship? They'll jump ship. They will. It will accelerate the drive to independence in Scotland, Northern Ireland, perhaps also. I mean, there's already Sinn Féin as I believe the largest party now in Northern Ireland, so they would be looking for union with the South, and of course, even in Wales now, the possibility of secession from Britain is starting to look much more real than it did even a few years ago. And of course, we no longer have the personality of the Queen, who was universally respected and tie the whole thing together. So it's not impossible. We could very well start to see the whole union unravel. But I'm going to make a suggestion, which is that people in government should put aside concerns about that. They need to deal with this problem now. My own view is that this financial package that Kwarteng announced on Friday went much too far. It was completely reckless. It was uncosted. It was clearly intended, as we discussed previously, to prepare the grounds for an election, a Conservative election victory. I think they need to draw back. They need to slow down on some of the spending that they're doing. Maybe think again about some of these tax cuts. Don't cancel them maybe, but say, you're postponing bringing them in. I don't know, find something, because you need to stabilize the situation now. Britain doesn't have huge currency reserves like, say, Japan does, that it can just use in order to buy sterling on the financial markets in order to support sterling. We don't have that resource that, say, Japan does. So we've got to try and find some way of restoring confidence in the markets. If it's not done fiscally, it will be done through interest rates. And if it's done through interest rates, then the effect on the economy could be dire.
Okay. Yeah, they're not going to talk to Russia.
Oh, no.
That's been ruled out.
No, well, that's the other thing they have to do. I mean, I understand Orban is now saying that they've got to try and the EU has to find a way of lifting the sanctions by the end of this year. Well, we'll see. I can't imagine Ursula agreeing to anything like that. I mean, if Ursula did, she'd be out of a job. So that makes it certainty
she's got to go.
that she went.
I mean,
what?
She has to go.
Yeah.
She has to go.
She'd have exactly.
Yeah, you're not going to fix anything if she's still there.
It's still there, exactly. Anyway, we'll see.
All right. The Duran.locals.com and go to the Duran shop, 10% off. Use the code. Good day.